Welcome to Inquiry into Self. So, the regular question that I ask is, what in me wants this moment? I can come up with a bunch of different ideas about how this moment should be, and all those are just ideas. But there is life manifesting as this moment. And to align myself with that reality, with that true vibrancy of what is, I can ask the question, what in me wants this moment? And when I find that part, it may seem just a thread. I know I found the part that is the real, the alive, the eternal flow of what is. And so I learn how to tune into that aspect. So here's an example. First, this is a case of loss. And I just want to point out that loss is only a mental concept. When we look around us, there is no gap. There's no hole over there. There is, whatever's over there is over there. There's nothing missing. The idea of something missing is only in our head. Now, of course, in this case, when my pets died, there was an ending, but the idea of loss is a concept that they should have continued. And that's just a concept. Without that idea that they should have continued, there's no loss. So not that there's any criticism for loss, because we have the experience of loss. That's what humans create in our heads. But I'm just noticing that loss is something that we create in our heads. That when my pets died, then there was whatever else was still in my life. Okay, so let's do inquiry about this situation. So I had been living in a community home. I lived with an intentional community for about a year. And one of the people in the home regularly used bleach on the floor of the kitchen about every week. And it was bleach water, but there's a lot of bleach in it. You could really smell the bleach. She liked the bleach. And my dogs licked off the kitchen floor all the time. I have no idea how they get to handle it. There's a couple times when I scraped something up with my finger and later got my finger in my mouth and I could taste the bleach. But, I wasn't really on top of them and making sure they never licked up crumbs. This was a community house. There were lots of crumbs on the kitchen floor. So, but they both died of cancer within 6 months of each other. Now, they were on the older side, 12, 13 years old. But as pugs, they could have lived longer, theoretically. So, I could have come up with in my head that the bleach contributed to that. There also had been another exposure they had had another year earlier. So maybe that caused the cancer. Maybe it had nothing to do with anything. But my head could come up with the idea that both my pugs died of cancer so close together, that shouldn't have happened. There was an exposure that caused that to happen. But what was actually happening was they both died. And, any time that something dies, the human way of handling that situation is to feel it as loss. Because we tend to like continuity of things like that. We don't foresee exactly the moment that they're going to end. So I went from relating to my pugs to no longer having their bodies around to relate to. And there's that empty feeling. There's like a little heaviness and weight inside and emptiness. It's a whole sensation that we attribute to as loss. Now, what in me wants this moment? What in me wants my pugs to have died? Well, in this situation, it turned out I was moving to New York City. And for senior dogs, that's a big move, to go from suburban areas to that kind of a urban area, downtown Manhattan, well, inside Manhattan, not downtown Manhattan. Sidewalks are busy, people are scurrying. It's a whole nother learn for them to learn how to walk in that environment. So the timing turned out to be perfect. They didn't have the stress of having to accommodate to that move. Really, the timing turned out to be perfect. And I felt inside me when I noticed that, something that said, oh, you're betraying them, to say that was perfect timing for them to die. 12, 13 years old, they could have lived longer, supposedly. But that voice that says you're betraying them, that was just trying to live up to some image of how I should be. There was also the part of me that knew it was perfect timing. And to rest in that part, because obviously it was perfect timing because it happened. It felt like, is that okay? Do I have permission to admit that this is perfect timing? It's a very interesting thing to come into agreement with what is. Because there's so many rules we have about how we're supposed to relate. So when loss happens, I can find the thread that says, oh, I've had that person enough for now. I've had that animal enough for now. That way of relating is over. And to allow myself the permission to settle into that knowing, settle into the gratitude of all that we shared, and settle into the curiosity of what the future holds. It's really stepping out into the unknown, to just let loss be good. Of course, if there's mourning, there's mourning. I'm not arguing with the mourning. But there's the part that knows that the future is moving on to something new. And there's a part that's interested in this something new. And so when I settle into that part, yes, I can hold the mourning gently. I can have love for that part. But also I can notice what I'm really mourning is that wonderful relating we had. The relating I had with my pugs actually has never ended. They remain this living essence in my awareness. And when my best friend died, I internalized all the parts of our relationship, of our relating, that mattered most to me. I really learned how to be the wise person to me that he had been to me. Be the loving person to me that he had been to me. Be the encouraging person to me that he had been to me. So I carry all of that wisdom within me. So when he left, it turned out there was almost no loss. But if there is a sense of loss, we can celebrate all of that heritage that comes into our life now with all those experiences and all that we learned. So yes, there's room to be tender. The vulnerability of being human is such a unique experience. This timelessness thing that we are, this infinite thing that we are, could never experience loss and vulnerability. without taking on a human experience. So yes, there's room for the loss, but there's also the noticing of what's actually still here. And then there's the noticing of this that wants this moment and that has curiosity about what is here and what the now and the next now and the next now hold.